Friday, 8 p.m. on ABC. It's the Pac-12 championship, baby, in Las Vegas. You've got the Oregon Ducks as a 9-point favorite over the Washington Huskies. The over-under is set at 66.5. Allegiant Stadium will be the host for this huge Friday night Pac-12 matchup. This is the last of these, Mason, that we're going to see like this. The Pac-12 is on the way out, but not before they burn so bright here in the 23 college football season. My goodness, the Pac-12 has been a very fun conference to watch, very competitive. There's been some really, really good ball games and some really, really good teams in the Pac-12 this year, and it has been a lot of fun to watch. Not for the faint of heart either. Let's kind of dive into some of these numbers and let's kind of take a look at what the Oregon Ducks have put together in the 2023 season. Dan Lanning has done a fantastic job with this group. I mean, Dan Lanning comes over from Georgia here in his second year, is doing his best to get the Ducks into the playoff by beating the Washington Huskies, who defeated them earlier this season. So he will be trying to avenge that loss. Bo Nix, as everyone knows at this point, is a Heisman contender. I think he's definitely going to be in the group that goes to New York, and I think he stands a really good chance of winning the award. This game, I think, is going to have a lot to do with dictating that. Oregon has got a pretty well-balanced squad, and we're going to go through some of the offensive rankings for the country here. Yards per game, they're at second with 538.5. This offense has been seriously productive this year. When you look at some of the total yardage that they've had for this season, I mean, it is absolutely staggering. They are lapping their opponents in total net yards in their football games played. Basically 6,500 yards of offense versus only giving up 3,500 this season. I mean, when they have beat people, they've beat them to a pulp. I don't know if anybody remembers the Portland State game that happened earlier this year. And then the coach did his radio show from Portland State, and he said, well, that was a rough one. We lost 81-7 and had a guy lose an ear out there. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute now. Is somebody lost an ear in a football game? I got to go back and watch this. That's the type of season that Oregon's had this year. Really, really cruising to a lot of big victories, and a lot of it had to do with that offense. Rushing yards per game, 189.7. That's 25th in the country. Passing yards per game, 348. That's first in the country. Points per game, 45.2. That's second in the country. So this offense, pretty well versed with a lot of these awesome playmakers that they've got. Bucky Irving gone over 1,000 yards rushing for this year. Obviously, we talked about Bo Nix, who's got 3,906 yards this year. One of the most impressive things about him is he's almost 80% completion for the year. Absolutely staggering stat there. Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson, Gary Bryant, all your top three receivers there for the Oregon Ducks. Defensively, 14th in yards per game, 8th rushing yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed. They're 36th. So if you're kind of looking at maybe one spot that isn't great, it might be some of that secondary, and some of those corners have given up some yardage this year. So we kind of undressed the Oregon Ducks a little bit, and I mean, there's really just nothing that stands out that's just like, wow, this is a really bad unit for this football team, right? And we kind of go over to our Washington Huskies here. We'll go over some of these same stats. Yards per game, they're 12th in the country. That's really good, 463.3. Rushing yards per game, 105th, 122.6. Passing yards per game, third in the country, 340.8. Points per game, 38. That's 11th in the country. So everything really good there, except for the rushing yards per game. They don't have near as many rushing attempts as some of these other teams, so that has a little bit to do with it. But their yards per play and yards per rush is definitely probably a more accurate stat to describe the Washington Huskies in that regard. Defensively, 95th in the country, yards per game allowed, 41st in the country, rushing yards per game allowed, 124th in the country at passing yards per game allowed, and 48th at points per game allowed. So this offense is really good, and the defense is more of a, they try to be more of a bend don't break style, right? Um, Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, Dylan Johnson. Those are all a bunch of guys that round out this offense and make, they're the straw that stirs this drink for the Washington Huskies. But with all the numbers laid out on the table, Mason, what do you think that is going to be a turning point in this game, and how do you see this thing going?
Yeah, well, interestingly, this is the only matchup this championship weekend that is a rematch. It's the only opportunity that we get to see two teams face off more than once in a year. So it's kind of an interesting perspective there. So I think that to understand what's going to happen in this game, it'd be foolish not to study what happened in the last matchup. So real quick, in the previous matchup, Oregon lost this game 36 or 33 to 36, and I do mean that Oregon lost the game. They outgained Washington through the air and on the ground. Oregon and Lanning had some really weird play calls that is really what cost them the game. I don't ever want to say that the play call necessarily directly cost them the game, but it's kind of hard to argue that, right? Um, Notably, and of those play calls, the 2-point conversion after the first touchdown, which they did convert, but that was like that was really weird. We don't see that very often. A team go for two when it's completely unnecessary. The decision to go for it at the end of the half instead of taking the field goal into the locker room when you get the ball back to start the second half. Then again, on their second drive of the half, they march all the way down the field and go for it on 4th and 3 and come up short. And again, they go for it on 4th and 3 instead of punting and making Washington go the length of the field to score at the end of the game. And then, of course, they missed the 53-yard field goal to tie it at the end, and Washington gets the big win. So the question for me going into this game is, did Lanning learn his lesson? Obviously, there was some sort of strategic point he was trying to make in that game. Is he going to try for that again, or does he say, you know what, realistically, we have the better football program, which I think they do. Let's just go out there and play football and not put our guys in certain situations and predicaments. You mentioned Bo Nix. I think he's playing his best football right now. He's really cut down on the interception since his freshman year at Auburn. His touchdown to interception ratio went from 15-6 his freshman year to 37-2 so far this season. And he hasn't had a game this year where he was less than 72% accurate. Just a phenomenal season for him. I'm with you, Mark. I have him as a Heisman frontrunner this season, given the team success combined with those stats. The ground game, has been great for most of the season, even with the loss of Noah Whittington in October. Bucky Irvin, Jordan James have been getting it done for the Ducks on the ground, averaging 6.75 yards per attempt this season. That's awesome. The O-line is a big reason for that success and for really the success of this Oregon offense as a whole. They really give they really give Bo Nix some time to operate back there and be a tactician. Defensively, Oregon's been great as well. They are not going to get a ton of sacks, but it's very hard to run on them. And on the back end, they give up some yards in the air, averaging 225.5 yards per game, which is 48th in the country. But they average just 10.2 yards per completion, which tells me that they keep a lot of throws in front of them and do a great job of preventing the big plays. So for Washington, we know they really like those big plays, right? And this offense has one of the highest ceilings in college football. It seems like if they hit on a lot of those big plays, it seems like they did hit on a lot of those big plays early on in the season, but have struggled to find that connection as of late. Michael Penix has 32 touchdowns and close to 4,000 yards, but it seems like he has cooled off as of late. 3 games in a row with less than 60% completion. He has seen a lot of drop balls, in particular in that rainy game against Oregon State. So that's not 100% his fault, but still, I think objectively, you notice a dip in his play recently. This home run strategy that Washington has employed has worked well for them this season, as they have been able to rely on Three of their best receivers in Odunze, McMillan, and Polk. They have a lot of one-on-one opportunities, potentially in this game as well, against Oregon, which we know Oregon likes to play man most of the time. So um, if Washington is going to win this game, I think all of the pressure is on those matchups. Can those very talented physical wide receivers go up and get the ball over the Oregon DBs? That is how Washington likes to play, but it leads to sort of a do or die situation. I credit the Huskies though; they don't give up on that play a lot of times. They may not hit it time and time again, but they don't give up on it. So credit to them. But that is really the matchup to watch for me. I think that the run game will struggle again in this one. They did not eclipse 100 yards in the last matchup with Oregon. While I think their D will get a couple of stops, I think that if Oregon makes better decisions, it will be hard for Washington to keep them from scoring. They did a great job in the red zone in the last game. Washington, that is, their defense. And they will need to continue that defensively and force some field goals. And then on offense, they need to have more drives that end in a touchdown than not. That relies again on that matchup with the wide receivers and whether or not they can win the one-on-ones. They've got to hit on at least 50% of their drives, and those need to end in touchdowns because Washington is not a team that is going to sustain drives and go down there and kick a field goal. They need that big home run play, and I think that whether or not they can hit that, it will decide the game. I do think that this is going to be a bit closer. I think that 9 points, 9.5 points, wherever you get your lines on this one. As of right now, I actually like Washington and the points in this one, just given the big game atmosphere and feel to this. I do think that Oregon wins, but I've got Washington covering. So my score prediction in this game is 40-35 Oregon.
Yeah, I like that prediction a lot. I think really it's going to come down to, can one of these teams get after one of these other quarterbacks? Both of these teams have been really, really good at protecting the quarterback this year, and I think whoever can get back there and get a couple sacks is going to be able to have an advantage and get a couple of stops. I think both teams are going to score. I think you're right. This Washington team is good for 3 big explosive plays a game. I mean, they're just live and die by the explosive play. And I think what it's going to come down to, though, is Oregon getting Washington into obvious passing situations where they're not worried about the run game whatsoever. Washington tried actually pretty hard last week to run the football, right around 30 attempts, and not a great yards per carry average for last week, and that was against Washington State. The competition level steps up a whole lot as far as that rushing defense going against Oregon this week. So I just don't see any real huge advantages for Washington other than uh, some of those receivers against some of those corners. And you're right, Mason. I think these corners and the secondary players, the safeties, they're going to be able to back up and try to keep everything in front of them. And if they can do that right there, then I think that Oregon can actually cover this thing. Um, I like your score prediction. Um, that 66.5, I'm a little bit weary of, because we've seen Washington in some big games. I guess not necessarily big games, but we've seen them in several games score 15 points, 22 points, 24 points, and these are all in the second half, of the season this year. So I'm a little bit worried about them being able to get to the point total that they would need to be able to get to that 66.5, because I think that Oregon offensively, I think they can pretty much do whatever they want, but I think the safest thing to do in this game is run the football. And you talked about the fourth down thing, and I mean, they've went for it on fourth down 21 times this year, and
Yeah.
that's a pretty large amount, but they are getting 71% of them. But that other 29%, man, I can't I know for a fact that at least a couple of them came back to bite them in the butt.
Mhm.
So, is the risk, does it outweigh the reward? I don't know. And I think Dan Lanning is gonna have to. I don't think that's necessary this game. I feel like the last game he felt like they needed some kind of spark or something, but I think they can just go head to head with Washington. I don't think they need that necessarily. So I like Oregon to win the game as well, and I like Oregon to cover the 9. If this thing got up, to 10, that would make me kind of start to worry because of that round number there.
Mhm.
I think the best you'd probably do is a push there, but I don't know. I mean, it's a I like the Oregon to cover the 9 in this one. I like where the number's headed, um, and I like those Oregon Ducks in this one.
Well, hey, the
Uh,
good thing is we don't have to bet on this publicly until Thursday at our Between the Lines
that
show
is
that we
very
do
true.
on Thursday night. So y'all be sure to come by and check us out on Thursday nights. And if you're betters like we are, maybe we can help you get a lean on one way or another in the way that you're feeling. I observe the right to change my opinion. I might be on Oregon, come Thursday night, but yeah, let's see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come hang out with us on BTL. That's Between the Lines. That is our weekly college football betting show. We have a lot of fun over there. Didn't have a great week on rivalry week. I don't think I'll ever bet on that week ever again. But I feel good about where our heads at with these teams this week. Some of these numbers are pretty crazy between these games. And
Mhm.
hey, if you're watching this right now and you're not subscribed, we hope that you'll hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you're an Oregon fan, Washington fan tuning into this, come join us here at First and Long College Football Show. We do Power 5 college football coverage all year round.